On the morning of Friday, the 21st of September 2001, Ana Montes began her day with her usual routine. She arrived punctually at her 6th floor cubicle, preparing for another day working as an intelligence analyst for the US Defense Intelligence Agency. For nearly 17 years, she served as its foremost expert on Cuba. She had access to some of her country's most sensitive secrets, and with her brilliant mind, she helped shape US policy toward Cuba during the tumultuous period of the 1980s and 1990s Cold War. She had, however, been living a double life. Behind her carefully cultivated image of the dedicated civil servant lay a woman harboring a profound ideological commitment to the Castro regime, and a talent for deception that would evade detection through 3 presidential administrations. By day, she drafted intelligence reports that shaped US policy. By night, she meticulously typed classified secrets from memory onto encrypted floppy disks that she passed to her Cuban handlers in Washington's Chinese restaurants. But finally, her duplicity had caught up with her, and her day was about to take a dramatic turn. The phone on her desk rang. It was her boss, asking her to see him in the Inspector General's office upstairs. Not sensing anything out of the ordinary, she made her way to the elevator, which she took 1 floor up. When she entered the meeting room, she immediately froze. She was greeted by FBI special agents, and she knew exactly why they were there. This is the story of Ana Montes, the so-called Queen of Cuba, and one of the most damaging spies in US history. It is not only spies that should be concerned about keeping their digital life hidden from prying eyes. You should too. If you use the internet without a VPN, you are leaving yourself exposed to malicious software, government censors, and those intent on stealing your personal information. That's where the sponsor of today's video, Private Internet Access, steps in to help. Private Internet Access is a VPN that encrypts your internet connection and hides your IP address. It keeps my browsing activity private and anonymous, even from my own ISP and when I use public Wi-Fi. They've got a strict no-logs policy, which means that they don't store any personal data about you. What's great is that just a single subscription protects unlimited devices across all major platforms. And it's not just about security. Netflix and other streaming services have different content libraries depending on where you are in the world. Want to watch Spy Ops on Netflix but is not available in your country? Just use Private Internet Access to change your IP address to any of the 91 available countries and all 50 US states. Best of all, viewers of my channel get 83% off plus 4 extra months totally free, which works out to just a couple dollars a month, along with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Click the link in the description to grab the offer. Thanks to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video. Life began for Ana Belén Montes on the 28th of February 1957 in the US Army Hospital in Nuremberg, West Germany. This was where her father Alberto served as a military physician. Her Puerto Rican parents had risen from modest beginnings through education and sacrifice. But behind the veneer of a successful military family lay domestic darkness. Behind closed doors, Alberto Montes ruled his household with an iron fist, subjecting Ana and her siblings to corporal punishment for minor infractions. As the oldest of 4 children, Ana absorbed the family's tensions most acutely. She understood the heated Spanish arguments between her parents and witnessed her father's unpredictable mood swings. When her mother Emilia finally separated from Alberto in 1972, 15-year-old Ana declined her father's invitation to live with him. The family's relief was palpable when he moved out. Ana had a particularly strong relationship with her younger sister Lucy. Just 16 months apart in age, for 16 years they shared a bedroom together. While their early lives were intertwined, they would drift apart as their adult choices led them down opposing paths. one serving the US intelligence community and the other only pretending to do so. Despite her family difficulties, Anna excelled academically. She graduated from Loch Raven High School in Towson, Maryland, with a 3.9 GPA before attending the University of Virginia. Her junior year spent abroad in Spain would prove pivotal in shaping her worldview. In Madrid, Anna befriended a woman named Mimi Colon and participated in frequent anti-American street rallies. After watching a documentary about the 1973 Chilean coup against Salvador Allende, Anna passionately explained to Mimi how the USA interfered with other countries and prevented them from living freely. Anna would carry this ideological conviction with her throughout her career, and it would ultimately drive her to betrayal. At university, Montes majored in foreign affairs with a concentration on Latin America. After completing her undergraduate studies in 1979, she spent the summer living with an aunt in Puerto Rico. She returned to the US in December of 1979 to begin her career working for the US Department of Justice. As a clerk typist, she worked in the DOJ's Freedom of Information Act office, where she processed appeals and advocated for or against the release of classified information. At the DOJ, Anna quickly distinguished herself, performing so exceptionally that her supervisor directed her into a special paralegal training program. Within 3 years, she had risen from a GS4 to a GS9 pay grade, becoming one of just 3 DOJ paralegals specializing in the Freedom of Information and Privacy Acts. She was granted top-secret security clearance, which also came with sensitive compartmented information access. This position granted her access to vast amounts of sensitive records of both the DOJ and the FBI. It was during this period, while balancing her graduate studies at the School of Advanced International Studies and DOJ work, that Anna was recruited by Cuban intelligence. The approach, orchestrated with the assistance of an SAIS classmate named Marta Velasquez, was masterful in its simplicity. Marta's primary mission as a recruiter at SAIS was to identify like-minded students, and Anna, an outspoken critic of US foreign policy with family ties to Puerto Rican independence, must have seemed an easy target. It was Marta who introduced Anna to a Cuban intelligence officer known only as Chang. Their initial interaction took place over the course of a dinner where foreign policy and the wars in Central America were discussed. During this meeting, Chang broached the idea of Anna performing what she considered sort of menial work, reading and translating English newspaper articles about the Nicaraguan Revolution into Spanish. Anna initially pushed back, questioning if they didn't already have people for such tasks and suggesting she had more to offer as a graduate student. Sensing Anna's intellectual pride, Chang swiftly shifted tactics. He proposed that she provide her analysis about what the US government was doing in Nicaragua, an offer that aligned perfectly with Anna's increasingly radical worldview and her growing sense of moral outrage at the US participation in the hostilities in Nicaragua. This pivotal 3-hour dinner in New York City ultimately changed the course of Anna's life forever. It was after this meeting that Anna Montes agreed to collaborate with the Cubans, reportedly saying, "Yep, I'm in." After this, Anna and Marta had more meetings where they further discussed their plans to divulge US secrets to Fidel Castro. Having crossed the Rubicon, Anna and Marta embarked on a seemingly innocuous spring break trip to Madrid. This served as a cover for their clandestine travel to Cuba. Once in Madrid, a Cuban contact provided them with false passports, which they used to travel to Prague, in communist-controlled Czechoslovakia. There they met 2 Cuban operatives, one of whom escorted them on to Havana. Once in Cuba, Ana Montes and Marta Velasquez underwent training by the Cuban Directorate of Intelligence, or DGI. This instruction included learning how to receive encrypted high-frequency shortwave radio messages and techniques to manipulate polygraph examinations. Anna was given the codename Sonia, while Marta was designated Barbara. As part of their operational cover, Anna was instructed to send a postcard from Madrid to her brother and sister-in-law falsely indicating they were enjoying a 2-week holiday in Spain. After an intensive 2 weeks of training, Ana and Marta retraced their steps back to Madrid using their false passports. From there, they traveled back to the United States. Just as she was positioning herself at the start of 1985 to be the perfect spy with a new, more senior job lined up, Ana Montes received some concerning news. Her younger sister, Lucy, had got a job working for the FBI in Miami as a Spanish translator. If this alone was not bad enough, Lucy was soon assigned to the Royal Flush Task Force, a top-secret operation investigating Cuban spies in Miami known as the WASP network. Lucy was surprised when her sister Ana reacted negatively to the news of her new job, finding it not only disappointing, but strange that Ana would refer to the FBI as jerks. Ana would later have to consider her brother Tito and his wife among those jerks as they joined the FBI in 1987, with brother Tito graduating from the training academy in Quantico, Virginia in 1989 and going on to become a special agent working in Atlanta. Ana knew that with her own siblings working in US national security and her very own sister involved in sniffing around her dealings with Cuba, she would have to tread extra carefully. On the 30th of September 1985, Ana Montes began what would become a remarkable career at the Defense Intelligence Agency, the primary producer of foreign military intelligence for the US government. Despite initially knowing little about military matters, she rapidly established herself as an exceptional analyst. Her early responsibilities focused on El Salvador and Nicaragua. Twice the DIA sent Ana to meet and brief the new Nicaraguan president, Violeta Chamorro, on her own country's military capabilities. By 1992, she had become the DIA's primary political and military analyst on Cuba, a position she would hold for the remainder of her career. In this role, she gained the nickname Queen of Cuba, reflecting both her unassailable expertise and her somewhat imperial manner. Ana's performance reviews consistently praised her high intelligence and positive attitude, and she received many agency awards and certificates of merit. Her supervisor, Marty Scheiner, described her as an outstanding analyst, a phenomenal writer, extremely prolific, typically producing about 2 to 3 times as much as the average analyst. This stellar professional reputation provided the perfect cover for her espionage activities. As the intelligence community's leading expert on Cuba, Ana had direct access to precisely the information in which her Cuban handlers were most interested. She was not merely stealing secrets. She was actively shaping how the US government perceived and responded to Cuba and other countries in South America. She was moving in the highest of circles, during the Haiti political crisis of 1986, even drafting an information paper for the Office of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Office of the Secretary of Defense. One of Ana's major contributions was her work on a report called The Cuban Threat to US National Security, an influential interagency analysis presented to Congress by the Secretary of Defense in May of 1998. Her reports were praised by policymakers, the military departments, and the intelligence community for their timeliness and clarity. Being so well regarded, it was Ana who yielded huge influence in whether security issues were honed in on or treated with less scrutiny. In many ways, Ana Montes was the perfect spy. She was driven by ideology, not financial gain, and thus was less at risk of raising suspicions by living extravagantly and beyond her legitimate means. She received very little from her Cuban handlers, just a few $1,000s to pay off a student loan, purchase a modest car, and a second-hand laptop. Ana Montes's espionage tradecraft matched the precision of her analytical reports. Each morning, she would sift through stacks of top-secret and sensitive compartmented information documents at work. She mentally catalogued the most critical passages. Once home in the evening, she'd quietly type these excerpts in Spanish on a Tandy 1400 FD personal computer, using bespoke encryption software supplied by her Cuban handlers. The ciphertext was saved onto floppy disks, purchased innocently at a local Radio Shack. These she would then wipe after each use with commercially available data cleaning kits to erase any forensic traces. She was meticulous in destroying evidence of her spying, using depth charge formatting followed by physical disk overwriting to ensure that no trace of her data footprints could ever be recovered. While she did work initially with Marta Velasquez, by 1988 they went their separate ways. The relationship was ended over a dispute contrived to ensure operational compartmentalization. Anna's covert delivery of her treasure trove of intelligence blended into everyday life in DC dining rooms. Over plates of General Tso's chicken at Chinese restaurants, Anna would slide a manila envelope containing the encrypted disks across the table. The couriers sitting across from her, who were often illegals or intelligence officers without diplomatic cover, would then ferry the data to the Cuban mission in New York. From there, it fell into the hands of the analysts at the Directorate of Intelligence. Anna even kept a dedicated beeper number, later traced to the UN Cuban delegation, to receive operational updates, a secure channel she believed impenetrable. The top-secret information that Ana Montes compromised was devastating in its scope and sensitivity. One of the most significant breaches involved the compromise of intricate details about US stealth satellites. This was part of a highly classified National Reconnaissance Office Misty Black program. Costing an estimated $9.5 billion, this program involved cloaking technology rendering these satellites virtually undetectable. Montes, having gained access to this highly sensitive special access program in May of 1997, promptly relayed details to her Cuban handlers. The loss of Misty's unpredictable surveillance capabilities caused tremendous damage, potentially hindering counterterrorism efforts and allowing adversaries to become more cautious. What's worse, it is believed that the Cubans most certainly shared this invaluable intelligence with the Soviet Union and other interested parties. Montes also had unfettered access to the SAFE system, an electronic information sharing database used across the entire US intelligence community. This system held an almost unlimited smorgasbord of secrets from various US intelligence and defense agencies, including articles and raw intelligence reports from DIA analysts and collectors. In December of 1996, Ana Montes further demonstrated her commitment to Havana by attending a classified war games exercise conducted by the US Atlantic Command. Cuban intelligence had explicitly tasked her with going to the event, anticipating that practically everything that takes place there will be of intelligence value. Montes duly reported the details of this exercise back to her handlers, providing key insights into US military strategies and planning. Yet perhaps her most insidious role was that of an agent of influence. Under her Queen of Cuba mantle, she drafted policy memos downplaying Cuban threats, which she did to great effect when she authored the first draft of the Cuban Threat to U.S. National Security Report to Congress in 1998. Her greatest power was to spin, suggest, or ignore facts in her reports, thus steering interagency judgments to favor Cuba's narrative. Tragically, her intelligence leaks also had blood on them. Information she passed on enabled a Cuban guerrilla rebel group, the FMLN, to ambush the Salvadoran military base at El Pariso in March of 1987. Stationed there was U.S. Green Beret Gregory Fronius, a Special Forces soldier who was training the local military. The assault by the Marxist guerrilla group led to the death of Fronius, along with as many as 69 Salvadoran troops. Montes had visited the camp at El Pariso twice, on the second occasion mere weeks before the attack. It is considered dead certain that Montes handed over details of the camp's security measures to the Cubans. How was it that a person with political views so anemic to the interests of her country could rise so high within the apparatus of US security? Surely there were red flags. If so, were these missed, or worse yet, ignored or covered up? Despite her vocal opposition to US foreign policy, Ana Montes rose swiftly through the security ranks because early vetting painted her as the ideal analyst. Not only this, but subsequent warnings were repeatedly overlooked. Her 1979 FBI background check for the Justice Department lauded her as loyal, very moral, and extremely independent. 6 years later, when she transferred to the DIA, a former colleague alerted investigators to her disloyal views on Nicaragua. Yet, the DIA still granted her interim top-secret security clearance, without the benefit of any polygraph or psychological testing. Investigators also missed two blatant falsehoods on her application. She had never formally received her master's degree from SAIS in 1984 over a disputed tuition fee, and she lied about her use of cocaine, which she used up to as late as 1982. Montes admitted these lies in a 1991 reinvestigation, but these were put down to youthful indiscretion and no further steps were taken. In March of 1994, she sailed through a DIA counterintelligence polygraph using the techniques of physiological manipulation taught to her by her Cuban handlers years earlier. It was 2 years later, in 1996, that a colleague started to pick up on Montes's unusual behavior. Analyst Reg Brown noted Montes's overzealous desire for access to sensitive meetings and, one day, her agitated departure from a Pentagon briefing on the shooting down by the Cuban Air Force of two brothers to the rescue planes. A personal review the following year in 1997 cleared Ana Montes yet again. Ana Montes was seemingly a smooth operator, but her double life took an extreme toll on her physical and mental health. By 1997, and after more than a decade of spying for Cuba, she was treated for anxiety and depression, had trouble sleeping, and was prone to crying spells. Her Cuban handlers were ultimately her only lifeline, and perhaps the only people she truly trusted. As the end of the millennium drew near, her reason to worry about her life of deceit would soon intensify. The FBI had for years been hunting for an unknown subject, or unsub, a suspected deep-cover Cuban mole within the U.S. intelligence community. The investigation was codenamed Blue Wren. As far back as the 1980s and 1990s, Fidel Castro seemed always to have foreknowledge of U.S. military and intelligence operations in El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Panama. Cuban intelligence always seemed to be one step ahead. The CIA experienced persistent difficulty in running Cuban agents, and technical intelligence operations mysteriously ceased after short periods. This all suggested that the Cubans were being tipped off. By the late 1990s, it seemed obvious that a spy of some kind existed within the US intelligence community. By 1994, Blue Wren had expanded to include analysts and investigators from the FBI, CIA, and NSA, and was becoming one of the largest mole hunts in American counterintelligence history. Despite the resources being thrown at it, the investigation was yielding little in the way of results. The breakthrough in the investigation came from an unexpected direction. Anna's sister Lucy was still working as an FBI translator in Miami, supporting the investigation into the WASP network. The spy ring, being operated by the DGI from out of Havana, comprised at least a dozen Cuban operatives. The WASP network was broken up by the FBI's Miami field office in September 1998, arresting 10 of its members. This was considered the biggest spy ring bust in years from Cuba. The investigation yielded a large amount of evidence, including files on floppy disks and information from intercepted radio messages. The FBI also recovered the crypto keys that allowed the deciphering of communications shared across the spy network. Once the NSA had broken the code, they were able to read years' worth of high-frequency messages to and from Havana, including hundreds sent by and to an agent referred to as Agent S or Sergio. Despite this major breakthrough, the investigation seemed to stall, with the FBI doing not a lot with the treasure trove of intelligence they had uncovered. Frustrated by the FBI's slow progress, in late 2000, an NSA analyst named Elena Valdez approached a small team from the DIA's Cuban counterintelligence squad led by Scott Carmichael with 3 pieces of key information. The first was that the communications transmitted over shortwave radio by the mole could be picked up across a significant portion of the eastern United States. The natural assumption was that the agent was transmitting within the Washington, D.C. area, a hotbed of espionage. It was an assumption, but they considered it a safe bet. The second discovery was that in October of 1996, Agent Sergio's Tandy laptop had packed up and was then instructed to purchase a new Toshiba Model 405CS for the price of $2,000 in Alexandria. There are a dozen places called that in the USA, but one just so happened to be in Virginia, given its proximity to Washington, D.C., and that it is home to many thousands of federal employees. Investigators were confident they had triangulated the mole's position. The third piece of evidence provided by Valdez was a communication that suggested Agent Sergio had visited the U.S. military base at Guantanamo Bay within a specific 2-week period in July of 1996. Another clue revealed by the shortwave radio messages between the Cubans and their spy was that Agent Sergio had access to the safe classified communications system used by the DIA. Investigators now believed their mole was lurking somewhere inside the DIA building located just outside Washington, D.C. But then a crucial mistake. The investigators assumed that Agent Sergio was a man. After all, the overwhelming majority of spies are men. They limited the ambit of their search to males that ticked all the boxes alongside the clues. After delving into the DIA's travel records, it was found that around 100 people had visited Cuba in the 2-week time window. When cross-referenced with other details about the unsub, one name stood out to Carmichael: Ana Montes. When he saw that name, he suddenly remembered that he had interviewed her some years earlier in 1996, after concerns about her political views had been raised. At the time, the issue was deemed not significant enough to be taken further. 4 years later, Carmichael was convinced that he had found his spy. As evidence accumulated, FBI Special Agent Steve McCoy opened a preliminary investigation in October 2000. By mid-December, this had escalated to a full field investigation, allowing for more intensive surveillance methods. The FBI conducted physical surveillance for months to establish a baseline for Ana Montes' activities and normal behavior. They noted Ana's suspicious use of payphones despite owning a cell phone. Further investigation revealed that the numbers she was dialing were being directed to pages in New York City. Most critically, the FBI secured warrants permitting a search of her office cubicle and secret entry into her apartment to look for evidence. What they found represented the final nail in the coffin for Agent Sergio. Tucked inside the wallet that she kept at her office station, investigators found the prepaid calling cards Ana used when dialing on the public payphones. They also found a set of digits that comprised area codes. There was also a New York pager number with area code 917. This pager number was traced to Cuban intelligence stationed at the Cuban UN mission in New York. In her home, FBI agents discovered 11 pages of incriminating documents on Ana's laptop. These included encrypted messages between her and her Cuban handlers that she thought she had deleted. FBI agent Pete Lapp uncovered another important piece of evidence: a sales receipt from 1996 showing that Ana had purchased the exact model of Toshiba laptop mentioned in the decrypted Cuban messages from a CompUSA shop in Alexandria. The investigation took on new urgency when investigators learned of Ana's pending transfer to the National Intelligence Council at the CIA. This prestigious position would have granted her even broader access to classified information across the intelligence community. Most alarmingly, Ana was poised within the next 24 hours to learn the detailed US war plans for the post-9/11 invasion of Afghanistan. DIA Director Admiral Wilson recognized the catastrophic potential of this information falling into the wrong hands, having legitimate concern that Cuba might share these highly sensitive plans with the Taliban or other adversaries. It was decided that it was time to bring her in. On the morning of Friday, the 21st of September 2001, just 10 days after the 9/11 attacks, Ana Montes arrived at the Defense Intelligence Agency headquarters as usual, but this time, her world was about to collapse. Around 9:50 a.m., she received the call summoning her to the Inspector General's office. The pretext was innocuous: Something about a minor issue with a subordinate's time card needed her attention. But waiting in the conference room that day were not IG officials, but FBI special agents Steve McCoy and Pete Lapp. Anna immediately realized she had been caught, and the confrontation was about to begin. Knowing that he had to play the game, McCoy began by vaguely discussing a possible Cuban penetration agent within the DIA. Anna remained resolute, cutting straight to the chase by asking if she was under investigation. When this was confirmed, she asked to speak to an attorney. With that, the confrontation was over, lasting just 4 minutes. Ana Montes was placed under arrest for conspiracy to commit espionage. She remained stoic and composed, showing no outward emotion as she was calmly escorted out of the building. The news of her arrest, of course, stunned her colleagues. Employees were instructed not to discuss the arrest with outside agencies to prevent distractions from Operation Enduring Freedom, the US response to 9/11. Facing charges that carried a possible death sentence, Anna initially relied on a public defender. Within a month, she retained Plato Caceres, a renowned Washington, D.C. defense attorney with extensive experience in high-profile espionage cases, including those of Eldridge Ames and Robert Hansen. The sensitivities surrounding the operations compromised by Montes meant that plea negotiations were crucial, as details of the top-secret programs could not be revealed in open court. On the 19th of March 2002, Caceres and his team struck a deal with the Department of Justice. Ana Montes pleaded guilty in federal court to a single count of conspiracy to commit espionage. To avoid the potential death sentence or life imprisonment, she agreed to serve 25 years and, most importantly to the feds, submit to a full debriefing. On the 16th of October 2002, Ana Montes appeared before U.S. District Court Judge Ricardo Urbina for sentencing. She was unapologetic while reading out a statement that sought to explain her motivations and justify her actions. "I obeyed my conscience rather than the law. I believe our government's policy towards Cuba is cruel and unfair. I felt morally obligated to help the island defend itself from our efforts to impose our values and our political system on it." During sentencing, the state portrayed Anna as the ultimate hypocrite for condoning deceit while claiming moral high ground. Judge Urbina rejected her sugar-coated rationalizations and imposed the agreed-upon 25-year sentence. Despite recommendations for lower security confinement, Anna was placed in the administrative unit at Carswell Federal Medical Center in Fort Worth, Texas. This is essentially a supermax facility reserved for female prisoners considered to be the nation's most threatening and dangerous. Her fellow inmates included Al-Qaeda terrorists, serial murderers, drug lords, and so on. The debriefing process began almost immediately and lasted an arduous 7 months. Transported daily from the Orange County Jail in Virginia to the FBI's Washington field office, Montes faced teams of interrogators from all the major U.S. intelligence agencies. Montes framed her cooperation as a painful necessity, calling the act of betraying her Cuban friends a form of torture and claiming that she lacked the courage to take her own life. Despite having some convenient memory lapses, Ana Montes, for the most part, held up her end of the bargain, providing extensive information on her Cuban handlers, detailing her tradecraft and many trips to Cuba, including the identity of her recruiter and co-conspirator, Marta Velasquez. Marta's fate played out a little bit differently. Marta Velasquez fled with her Swedish diplomat husband to Stockholm in 2002. There she still lives today openly, enjoying the protection afforded to her by Sweden's policy against extradition of residents accused of espionage. Anna maintained correspondence with her sister Lucy throughout her imprisonment, but never expressed regret or acknowledged any wrongdoing. In a letter to her 17-year-old nephew written in 2010, Anna again showed few regrets, justifying her espionage by stating that US policies toward Latin America were very unfair. She presented her treason as a moral imperative, saying, "Some things in life are worth going to prison for," or worth doing and then killing yourself before you have to spend too much time in prison, which is my personal preference. On the 6th of January 2023, after serving 21 years, 3 months, and 19 days, Ana Belén Montes walked free, subject to 5 years of supervised probation. She took a one-way flight to San Juan, Puerto Rico, escorted by a U.S. Marshal. Ana's family issued a public statement at the time condemning her treasonous actions and disavowing what she had done. True to form, Ana herself continued to avoid personal accountability after her release. She said via a statement issued by her attorney that she intended to live a quiet and private existence in Puerto Rico. This she seems to have achieved, living as a hero and a martyr among her community. She remains vocal in her opposition to the ongoing U.S. embargo against Cuba and supports Puerto Rican natural disaster recovery efforts. Ana Belén Montes stands as one of the most damaging spies in U.S. history. Unlike those motivated by greed or coercion, she was a true believer in the righteousness of her cause. The damage she inflicted went beyond the stolen secrets. By shaping intelligence assessments and policy recommendations from within, she effectively redirected American attention away from legitimate Cuban threats. Ana's story showed just how vulnerable even the most secure systems are to human betrayal. As is so often the case, the most dangerous threats come not from outside enemies, but from within the very institutions themselves. For 16 years, she was the Queen of Cuba, ruling over American intelligence with a secret allegiance to Havana. Her crown has fallen, but the damage she caused to American national security and that of the Western world will echo for decades to come.